Hi, my name is Maddie Smith, and this is my speech. Here's my audience. Okay, so imagine being in an accident. It doesn't have to be extreme, but an accident where you had to be transported to the hospital in an ambulance or by air. You would be soon sent a bill afterwards, and you would be stunned at the amount that you see. It can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for ambulance bills, and this just isn't okay. Everyone experiences accidents in life. This doesn't necessarily mean that you will be transported in an ambulance to the hospital, but you will more than likely know somebody who will. These bills can be outrageous, and this can happen to anyone on any given day. The cost of an ambulance and helicopter ride to a hospital are reaching sky-high numbers, and this is a problem that we need to fix because we need insurance providers to be able to cover the cost of these bills, and we need people to be able to afford them in general. I'm going to discuss with you the problem with high ambulance bills and why it affects so many people. I'm also going to propose some solutions to this problem. After experiencing an accident, people really aren't concerned about the money. They're just concerned about their well-being. But once the bills start rolling in, it's very questionable as to how they're going to be able to pay for those bills. One bill that always catches people off guard is the ambulance bill. So the first problem is that ambulance bills are just too high. 2 years ago, my dad got in a wreck on his way home from work. He fell asleep at the wheel for just a split second, and he ended up flipping his Trailblazer, and he had to be transported just 5 minutes down the road to the nearest hospital. When we got there, they informed us that their machines were broken, and so they couldn't give him any of the x-rays that he needed and whatnot, so they had to transfer him to another hospital that was 15 minutes by air, and this wasn't his fault. A couple weeks later, we got a bill in the mail, and it was $11,000. Also, according to Elizabeth Rostenhall in her article, Think the ER is Expensive, Look How Much It Costs to Get There, she talks about a woman named Kira Miles. Kira knocked out 3 of her teeth and had to be transported just 15 minutes down the road to the hospital, and they charged her over $2,000 for that ambulance bill. Transportation to the hospital should not be this expensive. Problem number 2 is that many insurance providers do not cover ambulance bills. Tamara Holmes, who wrote the online article, Health Insurance Coverage for Ambulance Services, quoted a spokesperson named Maddy, who pointed out that insurers make their own rules for ambulance rides and helicopter rides. In some cases, ambulance services will not even partner with insurance providers because they want to make money off the people who actually have to pay the bill. And then in other cases, insurance networks will turn down ambulance services as well. Medicare, which is one of the largest health insurance providers in the country, will also turn down paying for these bills as well. And people often wonder why, because Medicare has 40 million beneficiaries, so they should be able to come up with some kind of plan to be able to cover these bills. Ambulance providers have their reasons as to why these bills are so high, and insurers also have their reasons as to why they can't cover these bills. The first cause as to why these bills are so high is the equipment that is in an ambulance or an emergency helicopter. It can range anywhere from stretchers to wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, cardiac monitors, uniforms for the paramedics, and much more. It costs money to maintain this equipment. According to Ellen Nielsen in her article, Local Ambulance Services Struggling to Keep Up with Costs, it is estimated that it costs a local emergency department around $600 just to send an ambulance out with the supplies and fuel. It also says in a report to congressional committees in October of 2012 that the median cost per transit in a rural area is anywhere around $400. Bills can increase depending on how long it takes to get to the hospital, whether or not the hospital they go to is in the insurance network, or whether or not it's an emergency and they need the equipment that's in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. Another cause is that it is very hard for middle and lower classes to obtain insurance, let alone insurance that will cover these ambulance rides. Medicare is a system that I'm really familiar with because my dad was not able to be covered for his ride by Medicare. So if someone gets in an accident, say 10 minutes down the road from a local hospital, and they want to go to a different hospital because their doctor is employed at a different one, or they know that they can get better care, they cannot be covered for that, so they have to pay the ambulance bill. Also, Medicare rarely covers air transportation just because it's so expensive. It's all about whether or not emergency medical services agree to be a part of insurance networks, and whether or not these medical services and insurance providers can afford it at all. Although ambulance and air transportation can involve many expenses, there can be solutions that can help lower these bills. One is we can put limits on these bills. So there should be limits set to the amount that a person can be charged for an emergency ambulance ride. I say this because if someone has been in a small accident and they don't need the emergency care that's in the ambulance, they shouldn't have to pay hundreds of dollars for just riding to the hospital. In another case, if someone had to use the medical emergency equipment, we can see why it would be more expensive, but they still shouldn't have to pay thousands of dollars. Michelle Andrews, who wrote the article, Out-of-Network Ambulance Rides Can Bring Out-of-Pocket Expenses, wrote about a cancer survivor, Robin Springs, who had fainted in her home after having chemotherapy. She was transported just 20 minutes down the road, and she was also charged over $2,000, and her insurance wouldn't cover it. She also has to pay so many bills for her chemotherapy and everything else, and this is just adding on to it. With changes made in state laws and regulations and maybe even taxes, non-emergency ambulance rides could be around $500 limited, and emergency rides could maybe be limited to around $1,000, give or take. The number two solution would be that more insurance providers partner with emergency medical services. So this way that they could create better plans for their customers. I think that a patient should be able to go to their hospital that they know they're going to get better care at and not have to pay thousands of dollars just to go 15 more minutes down the road. With a limit on how much these bills can be, insurance providers should be able to create plans that can and will cover these bills. Taking into account the equipment that is maintained in an emergency ambulance or helicopter, it is easy to see that money adds up quick. However, the cost of emergency transportation shouldn't be the reason why so many people go into debt or why their credit is so bad. Millions of people have experienced the weight of these ambulance bills because their insurance just simply won't cover it. There are ways in which this situation can be fixed, such as limits on the amount the bills can be, and insurance providers who are willing to partner with medical emergency services so that plans can be created to cover these bills. So imagine seeing a loved one open up a letter in the mail and they see the amount for an ambulance bill as $11,000. I've witnessed this with my dad, and we had no idea how we were going to pay it, and we still don't. This is an outrageous number, and I know that this is the case for millions of other people in the U.S. as well. We have to get something done because of this. Hospital bills are already enough of a burden.